Hello and welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining my talk show. Wait, no. They told me I couldn't have a talk show. They said we should bring in other people who know more about the subject matter than me. So with that, we have Explorer by the Seat of Your Pants joining us this evening to give a wonderful session for us. So I'd like to welcome in our partner, Jesse, who is going to give a little bit of an introduction here.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Taylor. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm going to dive in with a little bit about what we do as an organization, how it might be a benefit to you guys at Scouts Canada all across the country, coast to coast to coast. And then I'm going to pass the buck on to another guest speaker at Ocean Networks Canada to blow your minds a little bit today on climate. So, as Taylor said, I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So if you want to check out our site, it is exploringbytheseat.com. And what we do is bring live, free virtual programs into classrooms, homes around the world, 50 a month, in fact, on everything from cave diving to space exploration, climate change to dinosaurs, any topic in science and exploration you can imagine. We've probably done a broadcast on it. So what I want to do now is just highlight our website. Again, it's very simple, very easy, but it's a way that you guys can learn more about what we do, register for upcoming programs, and take part. So let me bring that up for you guys now. So this is our website at exploringbytheseat.com. This was a big program we featured today in conjunction with the Toronto Zoo World Gorilla Day. So we had their conservation team on talking about the amazing gorillas at the zoo, what people could do to help protect them, and so much more. If you scroll down the site, we've got our extreme promo with George Karunas. Let's see if that comes up for you guys. Oh, it wants to work. Think about it.
I'm explorer and adventurer George Karunas. And when I explore, I do it by the seat of my pants.
So George is Canada's foremost living explorer and was kind enough to film that promo for us while standing on the edge of a volcano in Vanuatu in the South Pacific. A really, really incredible guy, and we've had him on for many programs, including another one coming up next week. And so again, we're all about beaming these amazing topics into classrooms, some of the coolest explorers and scientists on the globe, straight to your home every single day. By the end of September, we will have done 53 programs in 17 days. So we're all about sort of volume, but quality, quantity, a little bit of everything. If you join our newsletter list, right on our main page, that gives you access to our emails, a few a month, highlighting our upcoming programs, any special partnerships we've got going on, sort of things like today where we have the chance to feature some really amazing people. And then at the bottom, upcoming lessons. If you want to see some of the stuff that just happened, if you want to dive in with a program coming up soon, you can go to one of these things. So Erden Eric, another one of the world's top explorers, live in Hawaii. He's about to row across the Pacific Ocean. He went from California to Hawaii. Now he's going on his way to Hong Kong. And so he's joining us live before he sets off. So 11:15 p.m. That's a little unusual for us. But you can join, sign up. You can register for camera spots. You can do so many things to take part in the expedition. And then, of course, at the end as well, you can just join us on YouTube. Tune into that broadcast whenever you're interested and just be amazed at Erden's adventure and so many more stories. So that's what we're all about. We partner for some really epic things throughout the year. October is Space Month, so we're going to feature NASA astronauts, people who build the rovers that go to Mars, so much more. In February, we kick out all the men and spend the entire month featuring only incredible women in STEM around the globe, usually 60 programs that month. We really want to drive that point home to inspire girls around the world and certainly in classrooms in North America. So that is our shtick. I mean, we love to really connect kids in a meaningful way with exciting people and stories. And so I wanted to have the chance to highlight that today. And thank you so much to Scouts Canada for giving me that chance. So along those lines, a speaker we've had on several times in the broadcast talking about different topics is Dwight Owen. So Dwight is from Ocean Networks Canada. I'll bring up their site on the screen right now, oceannetworks.ca. They do incredible work to educate the public on ocean issues, things, and truly, everything is an ocean issue. 70% of this planet is made up of the sea, and so they do such great work to highlight the threats facing biodiversity in the oceans, the threats facing marine fisheries, what we can do to make the oceans better, which will ultimately in turn make us as a civilization better. So he's done some awesome programs with us. Today, he's going to dive in a little bit on climate. We're going to go in some really cool directions today, so I'm excited to turn it over to him, blow your mind for the next 25, 30 minutes, and then take your questions in the YouTube chat bar at the end. Thank you so much for listening to all this. And without further ado, again, passing that buck, I'm going to turn it over to Dwight. Take us away.
All right. Thank you so much, Jesse. And thanks to Talon and to everyone who's able to join us today. I'm so happy to be here and to to be with Jesse, who does incredible work, and it's amazing what the diversity of people who come on to Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. So I'm just happy to be part of this. I work for Ocean Networks Canada. We operate deep sea ocean observatories off the Pacific coast, in the Arctic, in the Atlantic, and we are gathering real-time data from the ocean 24/7 in some of the most difficult and remote environments on Earth. But today, my presentation is focusing on climate. I understand that for your activity for the week that's coming up, it's focused on glaciers, glacier melt, South America. And so I have a presentation about climate change, global warming, with an emphasis on the ice, the sea level rise, and glacier melt. So I will be happy to share this with you. And let me just go ahead and share my screen. So let's share the screen here. One moment. And Jesse, tell me if you're seeing a black screen.
I sure am, the blackest of screens. No,
okay. All right. Just before starting, I want to say that I feel very happy and fortunate to be living in the traditional homelands of the Esquimalt, Songhees, and Lekwungen nations. And it's a wonderful part of the world where I live, and I feel so fortunate to be here. So here's a question for you, and especially for all the youth that you may be a youth or that you work with youth. Who do you want to influence? And I think the voice of youth is so important. We need to find ways to amplify the youth voice and empower them to understand that they can really influence others, influence their communities, their leaders, and change the future. And the future really has to do with our home. This is the only home we've ever known. And this photograph here is one of the most famous photos taken from the Apollo 17 mission. And you know, if you go outside on a clear day and you look up in the sky, it looks like the sky goes forever. But in fact, our atmosphere is very, very thin. And if you took the planet Earth and you shrank it down to the size of an apple, the thickness of the apple skin is analogous to the thickness of our atmosphere. But our modern industrial society is spewing 162 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the thin shell of our atmosphere every 24 hours, as if it were an open sewer in the sky. So how does this global warming work? Well, we've got the sun and we've got the earth and we've got the atmosphere, and solar radiation in the form of light rays passes through the atmosphere and it warms up the earth. So some of that energy that the earth gains is radiated back out into space, but not all of it. Some of it is re-radiated back to earth. Now, as the carbon dioxide concentration increases, more of this radiation, outbound radiation, is trapped and re-radiated back to earth. This is called the greenhouse effect. Now, the sources of greenhouse gases are many, but these are all related to our modern industrial society, all the many different things we do. Many of them produce greenhouse gases. And among these, the largest source of global warming pollution is the burning of fossil fuels. Now, you know, it's sort of abstract to think about these whatever little molecules in the atmosphere, but we could think about it in terms of energy. And because the atmosphere is becoming more dense with with greenhouse gases, the energy gain can be quantified. Now, here is a laser pointer, and you can see it's pointing, and that's a pretty bright light. Turns out the heating from burning gasoline and diesel is equal to aiming 32 laser pointers onto every square meter on Earth. That adds up to approximately 1,600,000,000,000,000 laser pointers pointing at the Earth. And, that's a lot of energy that we are gaining. Now, there's another way that you could think about this. The energy trapped by man-made global warming pollution is now equivalent to exploding 600,000 first-generation atomic bombs per day, every day, 365 per year. And that is a lot of energy that is being gained by our Earth atmosphere system through global warming. So here's another way that you can sort of get a visual for this change that's been happening. This animation is from 1880 to 2020. And as you watch, these areas that are in yellow and orange and red are covering more and more of the planet. The ocean areas, the land masses, the mountainous areas, the Antarctic and the Arctic. And by now, there's been a significant heating up of planet Earth. In fact, 19 of the 20 hottest years on record have all happened since the year 2002. And among these, the hottest of all have been the past 7 years. Just this summer, we had some incredible high temperatures. For people who are in BC and the Western Canada, you may remember that super hot temperatures we had in BC this summer, but at the same time, places like Kuwait, Iran, Oman, the UAE, they had 50 plus temperatures. And these are temperatures that are hazardous to human life. Unless you have AC, you cannot survive very long at this kind of temperature. So the air's been heating up, but in fact, 93% of the extra heat trapped by man-made global warming pollution is being absorbed into the ocean. And this warming of the ocean is playing out in so many different ways. One thing that you may be familiar with, maybe you learn about this in school, it's the hydrological cycle. And what this is we've got heating of the water surfaces, of the ocean, of the lakes, that causes evaporation. The evaporation produces water vapor that goes into the atmosphere. It's carried over land, and then it falls as precipitation, rain, snow, hail, sleet, onto the land surfaces. Then that runs off into streams and rivers and back to the sea. So this is a cycle. This whole cycle has been getting amped up by global warming. And we've seen some incredible rain events all around the world in the past, well, just this year, the past 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, more and more of these torrential rainstorms, sometimes what people call water bombs, with huge amounts of rain falling in a short time. This is just a scene from Chicago where they had a sudden rainstorm that overwhelmed the sewer system. And you can see how the water actually blew the manholes out of the out of the street and caused these fountains of water. So today I'm not going to focus on this flooding. Maybe some other time I can share that with you. But this extra heat that's pulling more water vapor from the ocean is also pulling more water, more moisture from the soil. That's leading to drought and to heat waves and to fires. And we have seen some tremendous fires all around the world. Lots of fires this year in Western Canada, in the US, in 2019 in Australia, huge devastating fire. There's a fire going on right now I think in Spain. There's so many places. California has had big fires this year. So this is another impact of global warming. But what I'm here today to focus on is really the ice and the snow and the water reservoirs of our planet. Now, ice and snowpacks really, they hold a lot of the freshwater resources on Earth. There are also aquifers, lakes and rivers, man-made reservoirs, and forests. But ice and snow is the bulk of water storage on Earth. But this is changing. Now, this is the Uppsala Glacier in Argentina in 1928. This next photo I'm going to show you is from the same exact location in 2014. You can see that the bulk of that huge ice field is gone. Here is the Cori Calles Glacier in Peru, 1978. And here it is in 2004. It's a huge change. Here's another example, the Jacambala Glacier in Peru, 1980, 2003. It's gone. There's just a little bit of snow there. In fact, Peru's glaciers have lost 1/3 of their surface area in just the past 50 years. And glaciers in the Andes are melting faster than in any other region of the world. In Venezuela, which is close to the equator, there's just one glacier left on their highest mountain. It's close to disappearing, expected to be completely gone by 2030. Colombia, another equatorial nation, but they do have some high mountains, 6 remaining glaciers expected to disappear completely by mid-century. Now let's take a trip up north to our Arctic. And the Arctic is an ocean, as you know, it's not a continent. So what we have here is sea ice. And over to the left, this large semi-continent, that's Greenland. And then this is the North Pole, the Arctic sea ice. Well, that sea ice has been acting as sort of a mirror that's reflecting solar radiation. But as that ice has been melting, what's been happening is the Arctic Ocean has been gaining heat, solar radiation heat, and that's impacting weather patterns all around the planet. Now, I'm not going to go into this change, but overall, the Arctic sea ice extent was kind of on this up and down trajectory for 1,500 years, and now we have seen it's like it's dropping off a cliff in terms of ice loss. A couple of years ago, it's sort of surprising to think that the temperature at the North Pole was 28 degrees higher than normal in February. And in fact, it was warmer at the North Pole than it was in Chicago and other parts of North America. So these are crazy things that are happening because of this disruption to the climate system. This is the Muir Glacier in Alaska, 1880. And I want you to look carefully at this picture. You see the giant ice field, these huge blocks of ice, and the people here, the photographer. I'm going to show you this same place in 2005. That ice field is completely gone. Here's in the Svalbard archipelago in Norway, where the ice melt is like waterfalls that are just falling off of the ice sheet coming into the ocean. This is in Greenland, an unnamed glacier in southwest Greenland in the summer, 1935. That same place in 2013. And throughout Greenland, ice mass has been on a steady and steep decline. The Greenland's ice is melting 4 times faster than originally thought, and more is melting from the permanent ice sheet than from the glaciers. So it's forming these gullies and coulees, and the water actually makes these little rivers, and then it will go down these funnels and go down below the ice sheet. Ice sheets are destabilizing, and we have some tremendous helicopter footage from Greenland, and you can see these giant fields of ice. These structures are taller than skyscrapers, and they are just crumbling, disintegrating. This was a couple of years ago, exploding and falling apart under the pressure of warming. And some areas this is in northwest Greenland, what it looked like a couple of years ago, That's normally a white sheet of ice, but the dogs got more of a bath at this time than a frolic across the ice. So we're seeing changes. We're seeing big changes. Let's take a trip to Antarctica, the southern pole. And there's a lot of change happening there. And as an example, the Thwaites Glacier, about the size of Florida, a key anchor for the entire West Antarctic ice sheet, could melt completely within just a few decades. There was an event last year where the temperature at Seymour Island reached 20.8 degrees. And so that's a new record high temperature for Antarctica. And you can see the penguins weren't quite sure what to make of this. Now, this video here is interesting. It looks like there's been a sudden rainstorm, a downpour, and you can see this water that's piled up on the street. There was no rain. This was a sunny day, and this was high tide. It was a king tide in Miami Beach, South Miami Beach. And that's water coming up onto the streets, into the city, coming up through the storm drains. Here's another high tide in Miami, a parking lot. I think this is a covered parking lot, and we've got an octopus that's come up into the parking lot in the high tide. Other places around the world are seeing coastal erosion. This road has been eaten away by the rising tides. This is Venice, Italy, which is close to sea level, but they do have some high tides. And this St. Mark's Basilica has flooded 6 times in the last 1,200 years, and 4 of those floods occurred in the past 20 years. This was the Veneto Regional Council chamber in 2019, and just submerged in water. This sea level rise is also impacting some small island nations. For example, Kiribati in the Pacific, the first nation in the world to purchase land in another country to house its people because they expect their homeland, their island, to go underwater this century. So, if you ask the question, must we change? And I think, across the board, so many of us agree, yes, we do need to confront these issues and make a change. I would say it's an emphatic yes for most of us. But then the question comes, can we? It seems impossible. But in fact, we have so many solutions already at hand. One example, global wind energy is on an exponential growth curve. And globally, there's plenty of wind available. Wind could supply worldwide consumption 40 times over. Now, this is a boy that you may want to feature. Let's see, what's his name? I don't have his name, but William Kamkwamba. And 14 years old, he looked up in some popular mechanics magazines how to make a windmill. And he used some old pieces of wood and discarded bike parts, and he built this windmill. And soon thereafter, people throughout his village were asking him to make them a windmill as well, because this was producing electricity for their village. On the other end of the scale, we have the largest wind turbine in the world. It's over 260 meters tall. That's 3 football pitches long. So it's incredible how this technology is advancing. Solar power is also on a very, very steep exponential growth curve. And it's to the point where solar is so inexpensive in some places that people may live in modest housing, but they're able to power their lighting through solar power. And here, Sierra Leone, one of the poorest countries in the world, using solar power to power their laptops for their schools. This is the front of the Kentucky Coal Mining Museum. And it might be interesting to know that the Kentucky Coal Mining Museum has installed solar panels on their roof to power the museum, and saving them 8 to 10,000 per year in energy costs. Now, what I have here is the Chilean solar market. So, how much solar has been installed in Chile? By the end of 2013, we had 11 megawatts. By the end of 2016, 1.1 gigawatts. And Jesse and Talon, I'll just ask you, what's your guess for the end of 2020?
All right. Well, I'll come in on that one. I've got some cool, fun, positive notes at the end of this, too. This has been so great. End of 2020, I think at the very top, you got it to 4 at the top. I'm going to say 4. Talon, do you have any thoughts? If you want to come back in the broadcast, you might have stepped away for a second, but there you go. Come on in. What do we think? I say 4.
You say 4? The graph just goes to 4. I say maybe 3.4.
3.4.
Okay, let's take a look. All right, Talon's on it, 3.2. All right, how about currently, as of now, as of this summer, how much additional solar projects are approved or under construction? What's your guess, Jesse and Talon?
Okay, we're breaking the chart. I'm saying we're going up to like 10 gigawatts.
10 gigawatts, okay, Talon?
10. I think just 4.
Okay.
4. Okay, let's take a look. Let's take a look. Oh no, we broke it. We broke it. We bust through 10. Oh, we're past 18. Past 20. How about 27.5 gigawatts? So this is what exponential growth looks like. It's like we humans, we think in a linear way. We don't think exponentially, but these changes are happening in an exponential sense. Now, globally, there is enough solar energy reaching the Earth every hour to fill the whole world's energy needs for a full year. At the same time, our capacity to store energy is on another incredible exponential growth curve. We've got more and more car makers that are all going electric. And even during coronavirus lockdowns, people were getting encouraged to buy electric cars. This has been a trend that's really irreversible. And it's not just cars. We've got this awesome semi truck by Tesla. Other truck manufacturers are making electric trucks. So, if we ask, can we change? I think the tools are available. We have sources today to make this change, and there are other new sources that are coming online that will be just game changers for us. So the last question, will we change? And that's really the big question here, because there's a really important quote I have from Stephen Hawking. And he said, we are at the most dangerous moment in the development of humanity. We now have the technology to destroy the planet on which we live, but have not yet developed the ability to escape it. So, Jesse, if you could come to me for a moment here, I just want to note something, which is, if this is the most important moment in the history of humanity, well, that means that we are the most important generations in the history of humanity. We're the ones who have the opportunity to grapple with these issues and to make the change, to change the future, to bend the curve and create a bright and optimistic future for our future generations and our children. So, Jesse, I'll come back here to the presentation and I ask you again, who do you want to influence? And especially for the youth, who do you want to influence? And I would encourage all youth to find a way to speak the truth, even if their voice may shake. And we can find so many examples of this. Children, youth standing up and speaking truth to the decision makers in their communities and in our countries. This is a couple youth in my community. This is Rupert and Franny Yakalashik. And they started this little campaign on their own, making signs and speaking out. And they got themselves invited to our local city council. And I went to that meeting. The meeting was packed. The gallery was packed. There were so many people in there to listen to these little kids, cute kids speaking to council. And you could have heard a pin drop in that room as they delivered their speeches to council. And it was so moving, so touching, much more powerful than any adult could convey to our city council. So much so that Franny and Rupert became honorary citizens, and they received these awards from the mayor of Victoria, where I live. They have worked with all levels of government and persuaded 23 municipalities to make environmental rights bills. So, how can we find our voice? And how can we, make this change? Because our world really depends on it. So this is the question that all of us need to consider, and especially for all you scouters and scout youth, you're the ones really who can have a tremendous voice and make a huge difference for our planet, for our home. And our world really depends on you. So I'll stop there, Jesse, and turn it over to you for Q&A or whatever things you want to do now.
Well, thank you so much, Dwight, for such an uplifting end to the presentation. That was so fantastic. It was so fun for me seeing in the YouTube chat people getting very dire with some of the early projections talking about glacier loss and all these things. And this is the story of climate change, is that we, it is a huge challenge. It is something that's going to really push our species in a big way and push a lot of biodiversity in the world in a big way. But we can really unite behind these this positivity, this uplift, this youth wave of engagement and enthusiasm to make a big positive difference. And so if you want to come out of screen share so you can see us again, have a bit of a conversation, go for that.
Sorry, I forgot to do that.
No worries. What I want to do now is leave it open to questions. I know it takes people a little bit to have some thoughts percolate. So what I wanted to do is continue Dwight's end bit of positivity. In the last 2 weeks, there's been some really, really amazing news on the climate change front. Number one, a few days ago, China announced they will no longer work with any other foreign country to build coal-fired power plants. This is a huge deal. Coal is the dirtiest form of power generation in the world. Now, generally around the world, we've been switching from oil and coal to natural gas in a bigger way, which has reduced emissions hugely. But have the biggest country in the world saying no more coal is a tremendous deal. That was one thing. Number two, regardless of your proclivities in any other fashion, our new government that just got elected was given top marks by some of the world's top climate scientists on their climate plan. So if you're Canadian and you're interested in climate change, that is a really heartening thing and an exciting piece of news for you. And finally, as we're getting our questions starting to come in a second, the other day you were talking about this shift, and I love your Kentucky, your coal plant or coal museum with the solar panels, because if it makes sense economically, it's something that no matter what otherwise your ideology may be, people are going to adopt it. So a team at the University of Oxford banded together. They said, let's look at projections over the last 50 years of where, renewable energy is going and see what it is. And what they found was it's been really pessimistic. When people have done these projections in the past, they thought it was going to be maybe a little bit better, it's going to be pretty expensive. And instead, we've seen over the last 15 years what's happened in Chile. And so they projected forward, given that, like business as usual. We don't need to come up with any new major governmental changes. We don't need to do any pie in the sky thinking, let's just project exactly as it's been going in terms of getting cheaper and more adoption. And it's like in 25 years, we have the capacity to be carbon neutral. Like wind and solar and geothermal and all these amazing technologies are improving at such a rate and being adopted so widely. If you fly over Southern Ontario now, there never used to be a wind turbine when I was a kid. When you drove, there was maybe one or two. Now, if I drive west a few hours, there are like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wind turbines, which is such an exciting sign. And I think, again, kids are leading this charge. People are getting behind it. It's a really, really exciting time to be alive. So with that, Dwight, I'll be quiet. We got questions coming in. They all want to talk to you. So I'm going to bring them in. Let's see what people check it out. Okay. Ginger's joining us today. We've got people joining us from Manitoba, Alberta, BC, all across Ontario. Welcome into you guys. Ginger's joining us in Calgary. So many great Calgarians in our programs the last few days. Welcome in, Ginger. So she wants to know, what are a couple ideas that we could do with young youth to help them see where they can change or be the driving force for change?
Well, I showed those pictures of Rupert and Franny. I think when Franny spoke to city council, she was so small, she couldn't reach the top of the little podium. Her face was below the podium, and they had to bring in a special stepping chair for her to be able to stand up so she could see over the podium and look at the council members. I think the young youth, if we can find ways to give them the opportunity to speak before groups, maybe it's council, maybe it's a church group, maybe it is a community group or your scouting group, people to let them support them, help them stand up, help them prepare something that they could say, they could read out. That is so empowering for kids.
Yeah.
And they, they're beaming once they've done it. I've brought some kids before council as well who were teenagers, and they were so nervous ahead of time, and then they did it, and they just felt so pleased afterwards that they had made this huge step. Jesse, you were going to say something.
No, I was just coming in because it's just such a great message. I think, honestly, when I was a kid, everyone assumed my generation would be the one to really lead the charge in this. And we really didn't do the best job. I mean, some of us got pretty engaged with it. But the generation of kids that are 16 and under now blow my mind every single day. There's 500,000 kid march in Montreal and in Zurich and in Brasilia and like all over the world. Greta is like a hero to so many youth around the globe. And if you know the science, if you know the facts, if you're willing to speak up on it, like you highlighted in your presentation, you can be a leader. It doesn't matter what age you are. And so I think that this generation's really done an amazing job of, putting themselves into that limelight, even if they are nervous, even if they are below the podium, and making such a positive difference. So I'm so glad you got these messages in. Dwight, I love this question. I almost never get this question in our broadcast. So Nicole's joining us in Mission, BC. Lovely Mission. You wanted to know about electric vehicles. Any talking points around heavy metal extraction for batteries, battery life in cold Canadian climate? So I guess sort of the drawbacks or downsides of some positive otherwise stories as it relates to Canada or specific climates or specific things.
Right. Well, there's this concept of embodied energy. So if you have, let's say you have a fairly new car, conventional car. So a lot of energy went into creating that vehicle. And if you just went out and you scrapped it and trashed it and swapped it over for another vehicle tomorrow, it's like you're throwing away all the energy that went into that vehicle. So what I've heard for recommendations is, what we want to do is replace the older ones, the less efficient ones, the ones that are, producing a lot of pollution, and try to electrify those. And when we make our replacement decisions, we're going to look for a new car. Of course, we're going to try and find an electric alternative. Now, aside from that, there's other ways to get around, such as right now, we're all talking to each other without burning any well, maybe there's some fossil fuels in the electricity for this live session, but we can communicate over great distance and very conveniently without having to travel. And when we do travel, we can use other modes of transport. So those are things to consider as well. Now, batteries are improving. The battery technology is improving year on year. Battery life is getting better. And there's battery recycling. So batteries can be taken back, refurbished, remade into new batteries. So it's not like you put batteries in a car and then you throw away at the end of the life, you throw it away and it becomes a trash heap. No, those materials can be recyclable, and we could demand that they are recycled. So these are all, we're talking about a transition here, and we're talking about choices. And, in the end, what we need to get to is no more fossil fuel burning. And we're shifting to different ways of getting around and different ways of meeting each other and getting together. So that's my comments.
I love that message. And I mean, it's really interesting on a completely different sort of tack, I guess, is with food. Food is another thing that relates to climate in a big way. We've had many programs on that as an organization. And so one of the big ways is to, instead of going out and, taking out all the tuna out of the ocean, all the sharks out of the ocean, you can raise them in commercial fisheries on shore, like aquaculture. And of course, there have been big issues with that. A lot of the things that plague conventional farming plague these aquaculture fisheries as well. So it depends on individual business decisions as well, and how you go about this and how it's regulated by governments. And so, yes, there are challenges, there are problems with all these technologies. Yes, it does take heavy metal extraction to make batteries as it currently exists, and that can be very exploitative, and it can be a very bad thing. It comes to the ultimate, I guess, trade-off of how you want to, weigh that against general climate change from current emissions and how we've been building cars for 100 years. And we want to improve those technologies. So the more we do it, the better we get. And of course, finally, solar panels are not a viable solution up in the far north. In the northern Arctic, solar panels are not something that for most of the year is going to be very effective. But again, policy decisions go along, play a big role in this. Ontario, covered in wind turbines now. When you go to Saskatchewan and Alberta, barely any wind turbines. That's a policy decision. That's not based on the amount of wind that's there. That's a decision of the government. If you fly over Georgia, solar panels on every house. Florida, almost none. Why is that? Because the Georgia government supports solar panels and highlights this and makes sure that it's something that citizens and home buyers recognize as valuable to them. Maybe they provide subsidies for it. And so these things can make a really, really big positive difference. Dwight, we're getting closer-ish to the end of the various broadcasts. So I want to highlight a few more questions and then some great resources people can check out. Let's head into another one from Ginger. Ginger, if you keep coming with these questions, we're going to keep sharing them. Let's see. Did that pop up again? Did that just share? Yeah, something you can do to make an impact, maybe other than words, a way for them to see the positive impact. I love this question. I have some answers for this too.
Mm-hmm. I've been trying to spark this idea. I used to go to schools before COVID, and now I only go to schools virtually. But kids, they want to have something tangible that they can do. And there are these really cool micro scale things. There's this one thing called a smart flower. It's a little robotic solar array. And one sec here. And what it does, when the sun comes up, it will open itself up, looks like a little sunflower, like this. And then it will track and follow the sun. Now, these things, they're a bit pricey. If you're going to buy one for your own home, that might be out of reach, but a school could do it. A school community, they could work together with the kids. The kids love this. When I show the videos of this smart flower, they're like, I want one of those. How can we get one of those? How can we do this? And so I've been thinking, wouldn't that be great for school community to get together? Or maybe it's a scouting community, some other kind of our church group or something, and do some activities, fundraising activities, do some bake sales, do some potlucks, do some fundraisers, do some activities that involve kids and where they can see the money growing over time. And then you're going to buy something that's tangible, visible. Maybe it's a small scale a wind turbine that you can have in on your own school or nearby in your community. You could give it a name. You could paint it beautiful colors. So these are things, maybe tangible ways to include kids. That's my thought.
I love it. And I not directly related to climate, sort of tangential to it, but certainly highlighting the importance of biodiversity and going out and exploring. One of the things that we've been featuring in so many broadcasts that kids and schools and families love, plant a pollinator garden. It's so small. Get local seeds of native plants, plant them in your garden. If you have a backyard, if you're in a building and you can, take part in a community garden, it'll attract native pollinators, it'll attract native birds. It's very easy, it's tangible. You can literally see it growing. Similarly, you can grow your own herbs and vegetables. This is something where you're preventing them from being shipped from somewhere from afar, and they're delicious. So these sort of things are easy, they're simple, they're fun. Everyone gets involved, everyone loves them. I just, the feedback's been tremendous on our front. I guess two other things, not as tangible, but something that really seems to incentivize kids is playing with apps. They're playing with apps anyway, let's face it. Two that we absolutely love. One I know is being featured in a broadcast coming up for Scouts Canada very soon. Earth Rangers app. Earth Rangers is an amazing organization. They are like the kids conservation organization. You can win points. You can take part in their missions, recycle cell phones to help save gorillas, all sorts of great stuff. And my favorite, I think we might have mentioned this with Dwight in the past, the Seek app. Seek is Pokemon Go for nature. You can go with your phone. There's any sort of wildlife near you. You take a picture of it. It tells you everything about it, tells you everywhere it lives, and you earn a badge related to what you've seen. So if you take a picture of a squirrel, you've earned the mammal badge. Now the robin. Now I've earned the bird badge. So now you're vested in getting out and exploring more wildlife near you, and you're contributing to real citizen science. Like these sort of things, honestly, when I was a kid, I had to walk uphill both ways in the snow, and who knows what Dwight had to do. And now kids have so many opportunities to be so excited. It's just the best time ever. So very, very cool, guys. I love that question. Guys, we are nearing the end of the broadcast. So what I want to do is highlight again, Dwight is in Ocean Networks Canada. They do such incredible work. So please do check out their site, such special stuff. I know you're all familiar with the Scouts website and our Scouts and do all sorts of great stuff with them, but scouts.ca, of course, made this whole program possible. So check them out. And for me personally, if you're keen on climate change, if you want to work to protect it, if you want to work to mitigate climate change, don't protect climate change. Let's get rid of it. Drawdown. So Drawdown is a book by Paul Hawken and some of the world's top climate scientists. It is a way that we can not just slow climate change, but we can actively bring it back. Let's stop there from being as much carbon impact on the atmosphere. Drawdown.org is the single best resource you will ever find for climate change and actions we can take. So I really encourage you to check that out. Dwight, before we wrap up, I'm going to bring back Taylor in a minute too to highlight a survey. But is there any last message that you want to share for all our families joining us today?
Well, Jesse, I wanted to tell you about a sci-fi thing that our Ocean Networks Canada is involved in.
Cool.
And so, we have this big emphasis on let's reduce carbon emissions. We have to get to net zero. We have to, stop emitting, right? But in fact, the scientists tell us we need to go negative. We need to actually pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. And one great way to do that is trees and changes to agriculture. All of these things can make a huge difference. There are things called green carbon. So mangroves and coastal marshes and seagrasses, they can all pull carbon from the atmosphere. But we're working on this sci-fi project. So imagine this. You go out, you're on a ship, you go way out into the Pacific, you've been traveling for a day or more than a day, and what you see on the horizon is a big platform floating on the surface of the ocean. And on this platform is a giant wind turbine and a bunch of solar arrays. And this machine, and what the platform is doing, it's using the power from the sun and the wind and the waves to suck carbon out of the air, liquefy it, compress it, and pump it down a pipe that's going all the way down to the seafloor, beneath the seafloor, below the sediments, all the way down into the rock, and below the rock into the basalt, and injecting it into the basalt. And we have found that with certain types of basalt, that CO2 turns into rock within about 6 months. And it's going to be rock for millions of years. So that's a thing that we're actually working on, is to develop the capacity to suck CO2 out of the atmosphere and turn it into rock below the ocean.
I love this. So this is one of the things that's also like a pie in the sky thing when Drawdown was originally published. Enhanced weathering, so we can lock carbon in rocks. It's like the coolest thing ever. Another great book, Under a White Sky. Elizabeth Colbert is like the best living climate writer by hands down. Her most recent book is vaguely alarming. Like it's scary. It's like Dwight's presentation. It's like it starts out, you're like, oh, and then by the end you're like, oh, there's some cool stuff. There's nuance with it. It's complicated, but Under a White Sky is a beautiful book, and I really encourage you guys to check it out. What a cool technology you guys are talking about, working on. How neat. This has been so much fun for me personally. I think our audience has loved it too. And so speaking of our audience love it, I'll bring in Taylor to mention this as well, but we put up a survey in the chat. If you guys would be so kind as to fill it out, say whether you loved us or hated us or whatever you feel. That would be great. And Taylor, if there's anything else to jump out on the survey, let us know.
Well, first, Dwight, Jesse, fantastic job. Round of applause to you both. I know I loved it. I'm going to be filling out the survey multiple times saying I loved it. I'm truly inspired. And for our scouters that joined us, thank you guys very, very much for coming. It was a pleasure having you, and I look forward to seeing you all at some of our future sessions coming up next week. I know we have a couple skill sessions and a couple other neat partner sessions coming up next week. So be sure to check out the Learning Center to see what we have coming up, and fill out the survey. Tell Jesse and Dwight how much you love them, or maybe
multiple
this will
times. I mean, if you can cheat like Talon and do it like 20 times, by all means, we appreciate that sort of feedback. Great. I mean, he said it, not us. Thank you guys so much as an audience. You guys are great. Again, BC, Alberta, Ontario, Manitoba, all over the country. I know many of you will be tuning in afterwards as well. So thank you guys so much. Dwight, you killed it. That was so much fun. I really appreciate you joining us today. What a great presentation.
Thank you, Talon. Thank you, Jesse. I'm so happy to be here with everyone. And let's change the future. We can do this.
Let's change the world, guys. Well, on that positive note, I'm going to let everybody go. Have a wonderful day.